JJ is doing a special broadcast tonight for the show. He is in Crown Mines or Crown Interchange in Johannesburg at a massive roadblock. He was set to speak to the JMPD Police Chief, David Timber. Of course, he will be speaking to him in a short while, being at the peril of technology, of course, and live TV. We are having some technical difficulties. But in the meantime, JJ went to Cape Town recently in Parliament and spoke to the UDM's Deputy President. Let's take a look at the highlights of that interview. Stay with us.
Welcome to the special edition of Your View, coming to you from Cape Town in the Houses of Parliament. We are in the old Assembly chamber tonight, and my guest is Nqabayomzi Kwankwa, who is the Deputy President of the United Democratic Movement and as well as the Chief Whip out here in Parliament in Cape Town. Mr. Kwankwa,
yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting us. It's good to be here, JJ.
My brother, it's good to see you, and understand that now it's only you and the General in Parliament.
Correct.
What does that make you feel?
Not terrible, obviously, considering how hard we've worked, especially in the last term, because as you know that in the past the UDM was hit by floor crossing. And we thought that we're starting to gather some
floor crossing, come on, that's ancient history.
It's not ancient history if you consider that you need resources to be able to rebuild the party.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if you were to consider what happened back in the days, 2008, 2007, and then 2009 to 2019 rather, was the period where we're really trying to dedicate our time, trying to rebuild the party. But not all is lost, because we've actually begun that process. We've been there before. We've been exactly where we are before. We know exactly what to do. Now, in order for us to be able to improve our performance come 2024, I think one of the key lessons we've learned out of the 2019 election results was the fact that no matter how well you think you're doing, never desert your base. Because we followed a number of surveys that said we had growth potential in certain regions and certain provinces. And because we thought that we at least have a support that we can bank on in the Eastern Cape, we thought we could plow a lot of resources into those areas as a way of trying to grow the party. And in the process, we actually made mistakes, and I think we've learned from that.
How do you spread yourselves in 36 committees of Parliament? Just being the two of you?
It's extremely difficult, especially if you were to consider that a person like myself has additional parliamentary responsibilities, like being a chief whip of smaller parties. So you have, in addition to your portfolio committee meetings, you also have to attend a number of governance meetings and political management, really the political management of Parliament. Most of those meetings actually clash with portfolio committee meetings. That's why at times when people look at the attendance records of smaller party leaders, especially on the People's Assembly, they think we're not here in Parliament. When I'm not in a committee, I'm always in another committee or meeting of Parliament, whether you are dealing with the Chief Whips Forum or dealing with some or other governance issue or programming. But look, we signed up for this, and we know the importance of using and dedicating this time to serve the people of South Africa. You have to be strategic, obviously, when you don't have the numbers, and target committees where you know that there'll be maximum impact when you make your input. But we also have to be creative in terms of looking at the agendas, understanding the political challenges in the country, and trying to focus on those issues where you know you're going to be effective. You can't spread yourself too thin.
Yeah, but what would be the strategy? Would you have to select certain subject matters that you would feel, look, I've got 36 committees, but frankly, I'm just going to attend the following 2 or 3 things. What would be those 2 or 3 big priorities, big ticket items, so to speak, that the UDM would have to keep an eye on, small as you have become now in Parliament?
No, look, the issue is, even if although we have 36 portfolio committees, but you can really be a primary member in 2 portfolio committees. And you can be an alternate member in as many portfolio committees as you want, or as you think you have capacity to be able to serve them. So when you sit in a caucus meeting as a party, firstly, obviously, that process will start at a political level, where the party will decide as to which portfolios are strategic for the objectives, are important for the strategic objectives of the party. For instance, in my case, I sit in prefer to call it the finance cluster, and the general, there's a mix of the security cluster and the social cluster, because it's important. It's about trying to redress past imbalances and backlogs. So you will have to keep track of what's happening in those portfolios, and obviously use your experience and expertise to in instances where your interventions are required and your inputs are required, you do so as any member of parliament would.
Right. So just in terms of now the sixth parliament agenda, what do you think are the biggest issues that you have dealt with in the sixth parliament? So
on the division of revenue is that South Africa, because of the dire financial situation that the country finds itself in right now, it's become important and urgent for the country to start discussing the development of fiscal rules for South Africa. You can't have a situation where, let's say today, because it's the ANC government, they can even rack up your public debt to 80% of GDP or to even more than 100% of GDP, primarily because there are no rules and parameters governing that. I mean, there are many jurisdictions, including here in Africa, such as Kenya, where they have a debt management bill, debt management act rather, right? But I think what we're trying to propose as the UDM is to say we need to look at this thing broadly rather than just looking at debt, which is one component of fiscal policies, to say, when it comes to expenditure, what are some of the parameters we need to put in place? When it comes to revenue, what are some of the issues that we need to consider? It's a discussion that we started before elections. It was part of our manifesto. I think even in the manifesto, because we are trying to hone in on issues that would resonate with the electorate, we couched it as the debt management bill rather than in broad terms fiscal rules, because if you were to put fiscal rules in a manifesto, most of our people would not really understand what you talk about. That's one aspect, because the financial management of the country is very important. The second issue is, for us, the improvement of the effectiveness of Parliament. Over the past, especially during the Zuma years, the effectiveness of Parliament in its oversight role has lessened to a great degree. There has been a hollowing out of portfolio committees, the powers of Parliament, what it could do in order to try and ensure that it holds the executive to account. Because whether we like it or not, we can watch the Zondo Commission on a daily basis in disgust and at times be outraged by all the exposés that are coming out of that commission. But had Parliament been effective in its oversight role over the work of the executive, none of that would have happened, because it starts here. The governance issues were picked up and should have been picked up here, and Parliament should have actually given itself more teeth to be able to say to departments, if we make recommendations and you ignore them, there must be consequences. Currently what is happening is that we sit in these committees, we look at the annual reports of departments, we attend to governance issues of the various departments, make recommendations about what the corrective measures that they need to put in place, but departments choose to ignore them. I mean, I've been in Parliament since 2013. I was shocked when I read a legacy report of one of the committees, public enterprises in particular, to see that all the recommendations that we made starting in 2013 have never been implemented.
They're just documented for the sake of it. Just
documented. We go and debate in the House, we adopt them, and I mean, even when you sit with the officials, they will agree and nod vigorously, but fail to implement these issues. And because we don't even hold the political principles to account, nothing ever happens and nothing ever gets implemented. It's like us going to the House and saying we want to propose that at the next sitting, the House debates. No one ever looks at that, even though those are important constituency issues. The third one would have to do with what role do we play in trying to turn around the South African economy? What kind of messaging? Look, for an example, you know what Moody's said when it comes to the rating.
Yes.
They were very, very kind to us by saying we need to use the next couple of months trying to sort ourselves out. Now, exercises such as the medium-term budget policy statement should be platforms where political parties, such as ourselves, we put alternative proposals on the table. But I've had many alternative proposals coming out of various political parties which have not been implemented or taken into consideration, even though they would help the country to turn itself around.
But that raises the question about how effective you are ever going to be, right, as small parties, but the UDM in particular, right? What are the tactics that you are, employing, right, to be taken seriously, despite that you are having two vis-a-vis, a behemoth of the ANC that occupies, more than 200 seats. and all the other parties that are occupying other bigger chunks of the assembly. What can you tell me that somebody watching waste their vote because your vote may not turn things around, may not change anything, may not impact? What would you say to them?
Well, we've always been able consistently over the years as a party to punch above our weight. We were 5 in the last term, but we took the speaker to court on the secret ballot, and it made international headlines. And those were not the only interventions we made as a party. We are still going to continue to make those contributions to Parliament, even trying to reconfigure Parliament as an institution so that it becomes more effective. We are part and parcel of those deliberations with the speakership.
Yeah.
But I think what is also important for the UDM is for us, we've always prided ourselves about the fact that we focus on substance over form. Our inputs are always about making qualitative contributions to debates. We continue to do that. And we target issues that we feel are important in many instances that would have maximum impact. But I think as South Africans, you also know and realize that we have an important contribution to make in trying to build a South Africa for one of the issues that one cannot take away from us, in spite of and despite some of the challenges that we may have experienced over the past couple of months, is that I think one of the most credible voices in this parliament. When there are times where leadership needs to be provided on specific issues, when the House is divided, when there are times when South Africans are looking for a voice of reason, they will always come to the UDM, including some of the parties in Parliament, including the governing party at times, because we are guided by values and principles, and we don't take sides. If we happen to disagree with you on a particular issue, all political parties know that it's not because it's personal or we don't like your political party. It is because we are trying to articulate what we stand for and what we believe is in the best interest of South Africans. And that's what guides us on a daily basis.
After the break, I want to talk about whether or not the UDM itself, as a party, is still a force to reckon with. Because all of these things that you are doing, surely you need to have a backup or something. Right? There's only 2 of you here, but assumably there's lots more outside who are rooting for you, who are building the UDM on the ground so that they are able to pick up issues there that can guide your work here. So I want us to assess a little bit in your own words what's the state of the UDM, especially after the last general elections. We're talking to the Deputy President of the UDM out here in Parliament on this special edition of Your View. Stay tuned.